My name is Eliana Torres. I'm 23 years old. 3 months ago, I was sitting in my high school guidance counselor's office. Except I wasn't a student anymore. I was there as a guest speaker. The principal had asked me to talk to at-risk kids about resilience. Me, the girl who spent 6 years sleeping on a cot in her parents' garage. I was adjusting the microphone when I saw my mother in the back row. She hadn't been invited. Her face was pale, her hands clasped tight in her lap. She looked at me the way she used to look at stains on the carpet, like I was something that needed to be hidden before company arrived. When I was 11, my mother told me to move my things out of my bedroom. "Your sister needs the space, Eliana. She's got dance trophies and equipment. You don't need a real room. The garage is fine. You're low maintenance." She said it the way someone talks about rearranging furniture, like I was an object being stored. But what she didn't know was that for 6 years in that garage, I was building something she'd never see coming. And when Mrs. Whitfield, the social worker assigned to our district, finally pulled my file and saw my report card sitting next to my living conditions report, the look on her face told me everything was about to change. Before I tell you what happened next, please like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this story. Drop a comment. Where are you watching from and what time is it there? I love hearing from you all. Now let me take you back to where it all started. Growing up in Riverside, California, I learned early that love in our house had a price tag, and I could never afford it. My family. Dad worked long-haul trucking routes, home maybe 10 days a month. Mom ran the household like a small dictatorship. My older sister Valentina, 2 years ahead of me, was the princess. She danced ballet, played piano, wore clothes with tags still on them. Then there was me. The quiet one. The one who didn't need much. Valentina got spotlight. I got leftovers. When I was 9, I won the school spelling bee, came home with a little gold trophy and a certificate signed by the principal. Mom glanced at it, set it on the counter. "That's nice, honey." Same week, Valentina placed 3rd in a regional dance competition. Dad drove 4 hours home early from a route to take her out for dinner at Red Lobster. They spent $120 celebrating 3rd place. My trophy ended up in a kitchen drawer. I told myself it made sense. Dancing was harder than spelling. When I was 12, a year after they moved me to the garage, I made straight A's for the first time. All honors classes. My English teacher, Mrs. Patterson, wrote a note on my report card. "Eliana is one of the most gifted students I've ever taught." I showed Mom. She barely looked up from her phone. "Good. Keep it up so you can get scholarships. We can't afford 2 college tuitions, and Valentina's dance academy costs $14,000 a year." I told myself it was practical. Money was tight. I understood. At 15, I needed $200 for an AP exam registration fee. I'd been saving from odd jobs but was $80 short. I asked Mom. She said they couldn't spare it. 2 days later, Valentina came home with a brand new iPhone, $1,100, paid for by Mom and Dad as a motivation gift for her upcoming recital. I told myself it was different. Valentina needed encouragement. I could figure things out on my own. But all of that was just the surface. The real story was the garage. Let me describe it so you understand what 6 years looked like. The garage was not converted. It was not insulated. It was a concrete box with a single bulb overhead and a window that didn't lock properly. In summer, it reached over 100 degrees. In winter, I slept under 4 blankets and still woke up shivering. There was no heating vent, no fan. My bed was a folding cot with a thin mattress that smelled like motor oil. I kept my clothes in plastic bins, did my homework sitting cross-legged on the concrete floor with a flashlight when the bulb burned out, which happened often because no one bothered to replace it but me. I showered in the house, but Mom set a timer. 5 minutes. "Water costs money, Eliana." Valentina had a queen bed, a vanity mirror, string lights, and a mini fridge in what used to be my room. I was 11 years old when they put me out there. Something cracked inside me the night of my 15th birthday. It was January, cold even by California standards, maybe 40 degrees outside. I was lying on my cot in the dark, wearing 2 sweatshirts and a beanie, listening to the house through the wall. I could hear them laughing inside. Mom, Dad, Valentina, watching a movie together. I hadn't been invited. Nobody had knocked on the garage door to say happy birthday. Nobody had even mentioned it. I opened my phone. No messages from family. One text from my friend Priya. "Happy birthday, Eliana! You deserve the world." That night, for the first time, I didn't cry. Something harder than sadness settled into my chest. I pulled out my notebook, the one I used for journaling, and I started writing. I wrote down every time they'd chosen Valentina over me. Every dollar spent on her versus me. Every night I slept in the cold while she slept in comfort. The numbers were staggering. Over 4 years at that point, my parents had spent roughly $56,000 on Valentina's dance training alone. On me, they'd spent less than $2,000 total, and most of that was school supplies they were legally required to provide. I wrote it all down. Dates, amounts, incidents, exact words they'd said to me. Then I wrote one sentence at the bottom of the page. "I will not live like this forever." I didn't run away. I didn't scream or rebel. I did something quieter. I decided to become undeniable. From that cot in the garage, working under a flashlight and later a desk lamp I bought for $12 at a thrift store, I threw myself into school. Not just good grades, I wanted extraordinary. I joined every academic club that was free: mathletes, debate team, science olympiad. I started tutoring younger students after school, partly for the $15 an hour, and partly because it kept me out of the garage until dark. I saved every dollar, hid the money in a hollowed-out textbook in my plastic bin. Over 2 years, I saved $3,400. At school, I was someone. Teachers noticed me. Mrs. Patterson, my English teacher from middle school who'd moved to the high school, became something like a second mother. She brought me lunch when she suspected I hadn't eaten. She wrote recommendation letters. She stayed after school to help me with college essays. "Eliana," she told me once, "you have a fire in you. Don't you dare let anyone put it out." At home, I was invisible. My parents never came to a single academic event. Not one. Valentina had dance recitals. Front row, flowers, dinner after. I won first place at the state debate championship. Mom texted me, "Good job, dinner's in the fridge." But I kept going, because Mrs. Patterson saw me. Priya saw me. My debate coach, Mr. Franklin, saw me. And I was starting to see myself. Junior year, something shifted. I applied for a summer program at Stanford for underprivileged students. Full scholarship, housing included. 6 weeks of college-level coursework. I got in. One of 40 students selected out of 3,000 applicants. When I told Mom, she frowned. "Who's going to help me around the house this summer? Valentina has intensive dance camp." "I'll be at Stanford, Mom." "Well, I hope you can still handle your chores remotely." That was her response. Her daughter got into a Stanford program and she worried about who'd do the dishes. I went anyway. That summer changed me in ways I'm still understanding. At Stanford, I had a real bed. An actual mattress with clean sheets that didn't smell like gasoline or mildew. A real desk with a lamp that worked every time I turned it on. A roommate named Cassidy from Oregon who became one of my closest friends. Professors who challenged me and celebrated me in the same breath. The first night, I lay in that dorm bed and couldn't sleep. Not because it was uncomfortable, because it was too comfortable. I'd spent 5 years on a cot in a garage. A real mattress felt foreign. I cried into the pillow that night, not from sadness but from the sudden understanding of everything I'd been deprived of. During those 6 weeks, I took courses in molecular biology and creative writing. I earned a 4.0. My creative writing professor, Dr. Lena Sato, pulled me aside after the final workshop and said, "Eliana, your voice matters. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. She wrote me a recommendation letter that was 3 pages long. I came home in August with that 4.0, a letter of recommendation from a Stanford professor, a journal full of poetry I'd never shown anyone, and a quiet certainty that I was worth more than what my family had given me. Coming back to the garage after Stanford was the hardest part. Walking past Valentina's decorated bedroom, past the living room where my family watched TV together, and into that concrete box. I stood in the doorway and looked at the cot, the plastic bins, the bare bulb. For the first time, I didn't see it as normal. I saw it for what it was. Neglect, plain and simple. But the moment that changed everything, the real turning point, happened 2 months into my senior year. Our school district had recently assigned social workers to do check-ins on students flagged by teachers. Mrs. Patterson had quietly flagged me. Not out of malice toward my family, but out of concern. She'd seen the signs for years, the exhaustion, the worn-out clothes, the way I flinched when people mentioned home. Mrs. Whitfield showed up at our school on a Tuesday afternoon. She was maybe 50, gray-streaked hair pulled back, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. Calm, professional, thorough. She pulled my file. Report card, 4.3 weighted GPA. Ranked second in a class of 412, National Merit Semifinalist, State Debate Champion, 4 AP classes with perfect scores. Then she pulled the home visit report that a colleague had filed 6 months prior during a routine check. Living conditions: sleeping in an uninsulated garage, no heating, minimal furnishings, 1 light bulb. Mrs. Whitfield told me later that she sat at her desk for a full minute just staring at those 2 documents side by side. "I've seen neglect," she said. "I've seen kids who fall apart because of it. But I'd never seen a child thrive like you did in spite of it. That told me everything I needed to know about who you are, and everything I needed to know about your parents." She opened an investigation. Not dramatic, not cops at the door, but official, documented, real. My parents were called in for a meeting at the school. I'll never forget that day. Mom showed up in her nice blouse, the one she wore to Valentina's performances. Dad took a day off his route. They walked in expecting a routine parent-teacher conference, maybe a discussion about college applications. Instead, they found Mrs. Whitfield, the principal, Mrs. Patterson, and the school counselor seated around a table. And me. 23 people in that building knew what was happening. Teachers, staff, the vice principal. Word had traveled. Mrs. Whitfield laid it out calmly. "Mr. and Mrs. Torres, your daughter has been sleeping in an uninsulated garage for approximately 6 years. During that time, she has maintained a 4.3 GPA, earned national academic recognition, and been accepted to a Stanford summer program. Meanwhile, your other daughter occupies the bedroom that was originally Eliana's, and your household spending records show a significant disparity in resources allocated between your 2 children." Mom's smile disappeared. Dad's hands went flat on the table. That's not... She wanted to sleep out there," Mom said. Her voice was thin. "She liked the privacy." "I was 11, I said quietly. "I didn't choose anything," Mrs. Whitfield continued. "I have documentation of spending patterns. Over 6 years, approximately $84,000 was spent on extracurricular activities, clothing, and personal items for Valentina. Less than $3,000 was allocated for Eliana. Additionally, Eliana has been working since age 14 and has saved her own money for academic expenses that were covered for her sister without question." She placed the papers on the table. Report card on the left, home conditions report on the right. "This child did not fail despite her circumstances. She excelled. That does not excuse the circumstances." The guidance counselor, Ms. Rivera, quietly placed a tissue box on the table. She'd been watching my parents' faces. She told me later she'd never seen 2 adults shrink so fast. Dad tried. "We love both our girls equally. Finances were... Valentina's dance is expensive and..." "Mr. Torres," Mrs. Whitfield said, You spent $1,100 on a phone for one daughter and couldn't find $80 for an AP exam fee for the other. This isn't about finances. This is about choices." The room was silent. Mrs. Patterson spoke then, and her voice shook. "I've taught Eliana for 4 years. She is brilliant, kind, and resilient. She comes to school exhausted because she sleeps in a garage. She has never once complained. But I'm complaining now, because someone should have said something a long time ago." The principal nodded. "We are prepared to involve Child Protective Services if appropriate remedial steps aren't taken immediately." Mom started crying. Not the kind of tears I'd needed from her all those years. Not tears of remorse. Tears of embarrassment. She was humiliated that people knew. "You're making us look like monsters," she whispered. I looked at her. "You made me sleep in a garage, Mom. For 6 years. I was a child." She had no answer for that. Dad stared at the table. He couldn't look at me. The meeting resulted in immediate changes mandated by the district. I was given my bedroom back. A proper bed, a desk, heating. My parents were required to attend family counseling. Mrs. Whitfield monitored the household for the rest of the school year. I remember the first night back in a real bedroom. My bedroom. The walls still had faint marks where my posters used to hang before Valentina took over. Mom had repainted it pink for her. It was still pink when I moved back in. I didn't ask them to repaint it. I bought a $20 set of fairy lights and a used bookshelf from Goodwill with my savings. I made it mine. That first night, I slept for 11 hours straight. My body didn't know what to do with actual warmth. But the biggest change wasn't the room. It was that people finally saw what had been happening. And my parents couldn't hide it anymore. The fallout was quiet but devastating for them. Word spread through the school community. Other parents whispered. Valentina's dance teacher, who'd always gotten along with my mom, started keeping her distance. Dad's sister, my Aunt Marisol, called and told my mother she was ashamed of her. Valentina didn't speak to me for 3 months. When she finally did, it was to say, "You ruined everything. We were fine before you made it a big deal." I didn't argue with her. There was nothing to say. 6 months after that meeting, I graduated. Valedictorian. Full scholarship to UCLA. $65,000 a year covered. Tuition, room, board, books. I'd earned it from a cot in a garage. Mrs. Whitfield came to my graduation. So did Mrs. Patterson. They sat in the second row and cried when I walked across the stage. My parents were there too. They clapped, but they didn't cry. They didn't take me to dinner. They went home and helped Valentina pack for a dance workshop in New York. Some things don't change. That was 5 years ago. Today, I'm finishing my master's degree in social work at UCLA. Full funding. A $28,000 stipend. I live in a small apartment in Westwood with plants on every windowsill and books stacked on every surface. It's warm. It's mine. Nobody can put me out of it. I want to be Mrs. Whitfield. I want to find the kids sleeping in garages, in basements, in closets. The ones thriving in silence. The ones nobody bothers to look at. My thesis is on academic resilience in neglected children. My advisor says it could be published. Last month, I got an email from the principal of my old high school asking me to come speak. I said yes. That's the day I mentioned at the beginning. The day I stood at that podium and saw my mother sitting uninvited in the back row. My relationship with my parents is distant but civil. We talk maybe once a month. They've never apologized. Not really. Mom once said, "We did our best with what we had." Which isn't an apology, it's an excuse. But I've stopped needing one. Valentina and I are slowly rebuilding. She's 25 now, working as a dance instructor. She's starting to understand, I think. Last Christmas, she sent me a card that said, "I'm sorry I didn't see it. I should have shared the room with you." It was the first honest thing she'd ever said to me about it. Forgiveness is something I'm working on. Not for them, for me. I don't carry anger anymore. I carry purpose. Mrs. Patterson retired last year. At her retirement party, She introduced me to the crowd as the student who taught me what courage looks like. I cried in front of 60 people and I didn't care. Mrs. Whitfield still checks in on me. She texts me on my birthday every year. She never forgets. If you're watching this and you're the kid in the garage, the one doing everything right and getting nothing back, I want you to know something. Your circumstances do not define your ceiling. The people who overlook you do not determine your worth. You are not invisible just because the people closest to you refuse to see. Keep going. Build something they can't take from you. Become someone even you didn't think you could be. You deserve a room of your own. You always did. Thank you for staying with me until the end. If this story resonated, please like and subscribe. Have you ever had someone like Mrs. Whitfield or Mrs. Patterson? Someone who finally saw what everyone else ignored? I'd love to hear your story. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, remember, you were never the problem. You were always the proof that something better was possible.